Okay, it's on. Okay. Where is it? Okay. Okay. This should work, right? Wait, put this here. Okay, so this is the AP Biology Study Cram stream. So I'm going to be setting all up for the AP Biology test that is on May 2nd. So yeah. Let's see. First off, we are going to go through the course content on the AP Biology exam. Oh my god. My bad, sorry. Okay. Unit 1, Chemistry of Life. You'll learn about water's role as the basis of life and the functions of macromolecules like lipids and proteins, the structure and chemical properties of water, the makeup and properties of macromolecules, the structure of DNA and RNA. And that'll be 8% to 11% of the exam score. Unit 2, Cell Structure and Functions. Study the makeup of cells and the fundamentals of evolution. Topics may include cellular components and functions of those components, cell interaction with its environment, the cell membrane structures and functions, cell regulatory mechanisms like osmosis and selective permeability, cellular compartmentalization. On the exam, that'll be 10% of 13% of the exam score. Unit 3, Cellular Energetics. You'll explore how cell interacts with their environment and how fundamental biological processes work at the cellular level. Topics may include the structure and functions of enzymes, the role of energy in living systems, the processes of photosynthesis, the process of cellular respiration, and molecular diversity and cellular response to environmental changes. On the exam, there'll be 12 to 16% of the exam score. In Unit 4, Cell Communication and Cell Cycle, you learn how cells grow and reproduce, as well as how cells communicate. The mechanisms of cell communication, signal transduction, cellular responses, and feedback mechanisms, and the events in the cell cycle. On the exam, that'll be 10 to 15% of the exam score. Unit 5 is Heredity. You'll learn how traits are passed down from one generation to the next, the process and functions of meiosis, the concepts genetic diversity, Mendel's law and probability, non-Mendelian inheritance, factors affecting inheritance, and gene expression. On the exam, that'll be 8 to 11% of exam score. Unit 6 is Gene Expression and Regulation. You'll study how heredity information passes from parent to offspring and how these traits are expressed. Topics may include the roles and function of DNA and RNA, the mechanisms of gene expression, how genotype affects phenotype, mutations, genetic diversity, and natural selection, genetic engineering, and biotechnology. And that'll be worth 12 to 16% on the exam. Unit 7 is Natural Selection. You learn about Darwin's theory, the concept of natural selection, and evolution. Evidential support for evolution, common ancestry, the mechanism of natural selection and specification, environmental and human cause factors in evolution, charting species ancestry through phylogenetic trees and cladograms, extinction, and models of the origin of life on Earth, which is worth 13 to 20% of the exam score. Unit 8 finally is Ecology. You'll explore biological concepts of a broader organism level and analyze how populations interact within ecosystems. Topics may include communication in response to environmental changes, energy flow within and across ecosystems, factors in the growth, density, and success of population, factors in community and ecosystem dynamics, invasive species, human interaction, and environmental changes. And that'll be worth 10 to 15% on the exam. Alrighty. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading the entirety of this biology book out loud. because if I don't do that, then I'm not going to read any of the chapters myself. So yeah, let me reply to this. Okay. Let's see. Biology. The unity and diversity to life of life. Actually, my exam isn't on the May 2nd. It's psychology is on the May 2nd. I think mine is on May 10th. Yeah, because I have to turn in something on Monday. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna go to the first chapter. They're divided up into chapters, but it's only 8 units. Okay. Chapter 1, Chapter 1, Invitation to Biology. And I'm gonna have to remember. Let me see. I have my note cards here. But I don't have a pen. Wait, no, I didn't. Yeah, here it is. I'm gonna copy down the timestamps on the live so I know where to divide it up to review back. Okay. Chapter 1, Invitation to Biology. And that is at 7:31. Okay. Core concepts. Systems. Complex properties arise from interactions among components of a biological system. We can understand life by studying it at increasingly inclusive levels, starting with atoms that compose matter and extend to the biosphere. Each level is a biological system composed of interacting parts. Interactions among the components of a system give rise to complex properties not found in any of the components. The movement of matter and energy through ecosystems influence interactions among organisms and their environment. Evolution. Evolution underlies the unity and diversity of life. Shared core processes and features that are widely distributed among organisms provide evidence that all living things are linked by lines of descent from common ancestors. All biological systems are sustained by the exchange of matter and energy. All store, retrieve, transmit, and respond to information essential for life. Process of science. The field of biology consists of and relies upon experimentation and the collection and analysis of scientific evidence. Science addresses only testable ideas about observation events and processes. Observation, experimentation, quantitative analysis, and critical thinking are key aspects of scientific research. Carefully designed experiments that yield objective data help researchers unravel cause and effect relationships in complex biological systems. 1.1 Application Secret Life of Earth. In this era of cell phone GPS, could there possibly be any place left on Earth that humans have not yet explored? Actually, there are plenty. Consider a 2 million-acre cloud forest in the Foja Mountains of New Guinea that was not penetrated by humans until 2005. Since then, about 40 new species, unique type of organisms, have been discovered there, including a rhododendron plant with flowers the size of dinner plates, a rat the size of a cat, and a frog the size of a pea. Also discovered among the forest inhabitants were hundreds of species on the brink of extinction in other parts of the world, and some that supposedly had been extinct for decades. A few new or rare species were discovered accidentally, as animals that have never learned to be afraid of humans wandered casually through campsites. How do we know what species a particular organism belongs to? What is a species anyway, and why should discovering a new one matter to anyone other than a biologist? You will find the answer to such questions in this book. They are part of the scientific study of life biology, which is one of the many ways we humans try to make sense of the world around us. Ironically, the more we learn about the natural world, the more we realize we have yet to learn. But don't take our words for it. Find out what biologists know and what they do not, and you will have a solid foundation upon which to base your own opinions about your human's fit into this world. By reading this book, you are choosing to learn about the human connection, your connection with all life on Earth. The Pinocchio Frog. Biologist Paul Oliver discovered this tiny tree frog perched on a sack of rice, discovered the first purvey of a cloud forest in New Guinea. It was named after the Disney character because the male frog's long nose inflates and points towards during times of excitement. Definition of biology: the scientific study of life and species, a unique type of organism. And this is the frog. I don't know if you can see. This is the frog. It does have a Pinocchio nose. I think it's fun. Cool. Life is more than the sum of its parts. 1.2. Learning objectives. Describe the successive levels of life or organization. Explain the idea of emergent properties and give an example. Okay. Learning objectives. Yeah. Biology study life. What exactly is life? We may never actually come up with a concise definition because living things are too diverse and they consist of the same basic components as non-living things. When we try to define life, we end up with a long list of complex properties that differentiate living things from non-living things. These properties often emerge from the interactions or arrangements of basic components. I need water. Consider a complex behavior called swarming that is characteristic of honeybees. When bees swarm, they fly en masse to establish a hive in a new location. Each bee is autonomous, but their new hive's location is decided collectively based on the integration of signals from hive mates. A characteristic of a system swarm's collective intelligence, for example, that does not appear in any of the system's components. Individual bees is called an emergent property. The same materials assembled different ways form objects with different properties. The properties of roundness emerge when these squares are assembled in a certain way. Dun, dun, dun. I'm confused. Wait. When bees swarm, each bee, but the new hive location is collect signals according to the system, collective intelligence, for example. It does not appear in the individual bee. So I'm guessing it's something that has to be done. Well, no, it doesn't say that specifically. It's something that you do not find in parts of the system that can only be done with the whole system, I'm guessing. And you'll find it after it's been put together. That's what I'm getting from this. Life's organization. Biologists view life in increasingly inclusive levels of organization. This organization begins with the atom, the smallest unit of substance. Atoms and the fundamental particles that compose them are the building blocks of all matter. Atom bonds together to form molecules. Those are no atoms unique to living things, but there are unique atoms. A cell, which is the smallest unit of life, consists of many of these molecules of life. Some cells live and reproduce independently. Others do as part of a multi-cell organism. An organism is an individual that consists of one or more cells. In most multi-cell organisms, cells are organized as tissue. A tissue consists of specific types of cells organized in a particular pattern. This arrangement allows the cell to collectively perform as special functions such as protection from injury, dermal tissue, or movement, muscle tissue. An organ is a structure composed of tissue that collectively carry out a particular task or set of tasks. An organ system is a set of interactions, organs, and tissue that fulfill one or more body function. Example of organ systems include the above ground parts of a plant, the shoot system, and the heart and blood vessels of an animal, the circulatory system. A population is a group of interbreeding individuals of the same species living in a given area. For example, all of California's poppies growing in California's Antelope Valley Poppy Reserve from a population. A community consists of all populations of all species in a given area. The Antelope Valley Reserve community includes California poppy population as well as the population of other plants, animals, microorganisms, and so on. Communities may be large or small, depending on the area defined. The next level organization is the ecosystem, which is community interaction with its physical, chemical environment. Earth's largest ecosystem is a biosphere, and it composes of all regions of the plant's crust, waters, and atmosphere in which organisms live. So it goes the atom, and from the atom is the molecules, and from the molecules are the cells that form life, that form whether it be unicellular, multicellular, whatever. Molecules form the cells that form life, and from the cells you gain. Well, if they're not unicellular, which is still an organism, you gain tissue, and tissue is specific type of cells organized in a particular pattern in order to perform a particular job. And it's where most of the specialized functions come to be, and an organ is formed from lumps of tissue. It's a structure composed of tissue that collectively carry out a particular task or sets of tasks. Um, and then from organs are organ systems, so your liver, your heart. Um, no, those are organs. The liver and heart are organs, but an organ system, it would be like, I guess, your like where your stomach is, like all the parts of your stomach that are used, like your stomach, your bladder and stuff in order to help you excrete those digestive things that are considered waste that aren't used for energy. Um, a population is a group of interbreeding individuals of the same species living in a given area. So the population would be the population of humans living in a given area, whether like living in New York. How many people live in New York? What's the population of New York? Because humans are all the same species, and therefore, when we're looking at only one species, we're only looking at that population, which is different from a community, which is consisted of populations, and um, but it's consisted of, like, say New York, we have all the humans, but how many dogs also live there? How many um, animals live there? How many insects live there? Like, what's the community like of all populations of a species in a given area? And this and can the same can be said about very specific, because although we're humans, like we have different races, so a community can also be said. What's the population of the Black community in this specific area? What's the population of the white community in this specific area? But for community biology, it's all the populations of a given area. So like dogs, wolves, deer, and so on and so forth. and then from a community is an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is basically how the community interacts with the environment. So how does the community take away or add to the environment? Like, do they help in any way? Do they use the environment in any way? And then from the ecosystem is the biosphere, which is just everything that lives on Earth, be it trees, be it water, the atmosphere, just everything that that composes living creatures. And I'm gonna see if there's any specific. Okay. Take home messages 1.2. Biologists study life by thinking about it at successive levels of organization. Emergent properties occur at each level. All matter consists of atoms. Atoms join as molecules, and molecules make up cells. The cell is the smallest unit of life. And then from cells is tissue. From tissue are organs, and from organs are organ systems. From organ systems are organism, population, communities, ecosystem, and the biosphere, which are successively higher levels of life's organization. 1.3. How living things are alike. So, learning objectives: distinguish producers from consumers. Explain why homeostasis is important for sustaining life. Explain how DNA is the basis of similarities and differences among organisms. My back is killing me. Okay, we're moving. Oh, okay. Oh, well, the lamp's over here. I'll put it over here. Is that better? Yes, it is. Okay. Let's bring it. How living things are alike. Distinguish producers from consumers. I already read all that. All living things share a particular set of key features. You already know one of these features because the cell is the smallest unit of life. All organisms consist of at least one cell. For now, we introduce 3 more. All living things require ongoing inputs of energy and raw materials. All sense and respond to change, and all use DNA as a carrier of genetic information. So let me read that one more time. The key features of life is that they need cells, they require inputs of energy and raw materials, they sense and respond to change, and they all carry DNA. Subcellular basis, requirement for energy and nutrients, homeostasis. DNA is hereditary material. Organisms require energy and nutrients. Not all living things eat, but all require energy. A nutrient is a nutrient is a substance that an organism needs for growth and survival, but cannot make for itself. Both nutrients and energy are essential to maintain the organization of life, so organisms spend a lot of time acquiring them. However, the source of energy and the type of nutrients required differ among organisms. These differences allow us to classify all living things into 2 categories: producers and consumers. A producer makes its own food using energy and simple raw materials it obtains from non-biological sources. Plants are producers. By a process called photosynthesis, plants can use energy of sunlight to make sugars from carbon dioxide, a gas in air, and water. Consumers, by contrast, cannot make their own food. Um, Animals are consumers, so are decomposers, which feed on the waste and remains of other organisms. Leftovers from consumers' meals end up in the environment where they serve as nutrients for producers. Said another way, nutrient cycles between producers and consumers. Unlike nutrients, energy is not cycled, it flows through the world of life in one direction, from environment through organisms and then back to the environment. The flow maintains the organization of every living cell and body. It also influences how individuals interact with one another and their environment. The energy flow is one way because with each transfer, some energy escapes as heat, and cells cannot use heat as an energy source. Thus, energy that enters the world of life eventually leaves it. We return to the topic in chapter 5. Um, So, difference between producers is that they have the ability to use photosynthesis. Now, some unicellular organisms that aren't necessarily, well, they are producers. They aren't necessarily plants, but they're able to use photosynthesis to their advantage, which is using energy from the sun or gaining energy from the sun to produce food like glucose for their own purposes. And then the consumer has to obtain energy and nutrients from other organisms. So a cat has to eat a rat to survive, or a tiger has to eat a coyote to survive, or stuff like that, in order to gain energy. Energy and sunlight. Producers harvest energy from the environment. Some of that energy flows from producers to consumers. Self-feeding organisms are producers. Nutrients that get incorporated into the cells of producers and consumers are eventually released back into the environment. Decomposition. Producers then take up the released nutrients. And most fungi, many protists, and bacteria are considered consumers. All that energy that enters the world of life eventually flows out of it, mainly as heat released back to the environment. So, what I know is that there is very little energy, like, not all the energy is taken when a organism eats another organism. Most of it, like maybe 90% of it, only like about 10% of the animals like nutrients and energy is given to given to the animal that eats it, and most, maybe like 90% of it, is released back into the atmosphere, back into the environment as heat. That is usually basically waste. You can consider it as like the waste that leaves that can't be used by the animal. Um, Homeostasis. An organism cannot survive for very long unless it responds appropriately to a specific stimuli inside and outside of itself. For example, humans and some other animals abnormally perspire, aka sweat, when the body's internal temperature rises above a certain set point. The moisture cools the skin, which turn helps cool the body. All of the internal fluids that bathe the cell in your body are collectively called your internal environment. Temperature and many other conditions in the environment must be kept within certain ranges, or your cells will die, and so will you. By sensing and adjusting the change, all organisms keep conditions in their internal environment within ranges that favor cell survival. Homeostasis is the name of the process, and it is one of the defining features of life. Let me see. So what I know about homeostasis, of course, is meant to bring you back. It's meant to bring your internal body back to a set point, which said in the book is why you sweat so much when you're in a very hot environment, say at the beach or something, and the sun is scorching you, or like exercising when your body is burning so much of that energy, and therefore it exerts heat, that you will sweat and stuff because of the amount of energy that you're burning, or just like your body is working overtime in order to keep up with your body. DNA is hereditary material. With little variation, the same type of molecules perform the same basic functions in every organism. For example, information in organisms' DNA, the oxy the oxyribose the oxyribonucleic acid guides outgoing cellular activities that sustain the individuals through its lifetime. Such functions include development, the process by which the first cell of a new individual gives to multi-cells growth increases in cell number, size, and volume, and reproduction, process by which organisms produce offspring. Inheritance, the transmission of DNA to offspring, occurs during the reproduction. All organisms inherit their DNA from one or more parent. Individuals of every natural population are alike in the most aspects of body form and behavior because their DNA is very similar. Humans look and act like humans and not like poppy plants because they inherited human DNA, which differ from poppy plants' DNA in the information it carries. Individuals of almost every natural population also vary just a little from one another. One human has blue eyes, the next has brown eyes, and so on. Such variation arises from small differences in the details of DNA molecules, and herein lies the source of life's diversity. As we will see in later chapters, differences among individuals of a species are the raw materials of evolutionary processes. So humans, be it trees, be it plants, be it the tiger, be it the fox, we all share very similar DNA. It's just that there are little um, tweaks in it that allow us to hold these different forms. And in the case of a population, in the case of humans, the reason why we may look so different, even though like we may be part of the same species, but why we look so different, why we have different skin color, why we have different eye color, hair texture, hair type, is due to these little variations in our own DNA, in our own like little chromosomes that allow us to differentiate from each other. Take home message is a one-way flow of energy and a cycling of materials maintains life's complex organization. Organisms sense and respond to conditions inside and outside themselves and make adjustments to keep conditions in their internal environment within a range that varies cell survival, a process called homeostasis. All organisms use information in the DNA they inherited from their parent or parents to develop, grow, and reproduce. DNA is the basis of similarities and differences among organisms, and why they may say parent or parents is that parents, insects in particular, they do asexual reproduction, as well as plants, they do asexual reproduction, so only one parent is needed. So basically the genetics of the offspring is practically identical to the genetics of the mother, and parents, it's from two different parents. So the genetics are oftentimes, or chromosomes are meant to be a combination of each other. Environments, as we know. 1.4 How living things differ. Learning objectives lists two characteristics of prokaryotes. Name the four main groups of eukaryotes. You'll see in later chapters how differences in details of DNA molecules are the basis of a tremendous range of differences among types of organisms. Various classification schemas help us organize what we understand about this variation, which is an important aspect of Earth's biodiversity. For example, organisms can be grouped on the basis of whether they have a nucleus, which is a sac-like structure that contains the cell's DNA. So, okay, minute. Where was I? Did I say all that yet? I think I did. Okay. Bacteria and archaea. One thing about them is that one, they're prokaryotes, but also their nucleus is not contained um inside like an organelle or like yeah, it's not contained in like a organelle. The nucleus is wandering. Wait, no, my bad. The DNA is not contained in the nucleus, so DNA is not contained within that specific type of organelle that is meant to protect the DNA from outside sources that may contaminate the DNA or bring harm to it or just like eradicate it or something. It's meant to protect it, but prokaryotes, they don't have that shield of protection. Um, and they're also single-celled. Prokaryotes almost oftentimes are single-celled. And because they're single cells, they're more prone to diversity. Just because they can reproduce so quickly, and therefore, also because they're single-celled, they there's less, there's more chance of variation because, like, if you're a bigger organism has less chance of variation just because of their size and that there's so many cells. Therefore, there's so many cells that need to be manipulated, which will take time, which you know how evolution comes to be. Like with a single cell, it can just be like that. Um, different kinds different kinds are producers of organisms in nearly all regions of Earth. Some inherit such extreme environments as frozen desert rocks, boiling sulfurous lakes, and nuclear reactor waste. The first cells on Earth may have faced similarly hostile conditions. Traditionally, organisms without a nucleus have been classified as prokaryotes, but the designation is now used only informally. This is because bacteria and archaea are less related to one another than we once thought, despite their similar appearance. Archaea turns out to be more closely related to eukaryotes, and we're about to get into why, which are organisms whose DNA is contained within the nucleus. Some eukaryotes live as individual cells, others are multicells. Eukaryote cells are typically larger and more complex than prokaryotes. Dun, 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 dun. There are four main types of eukaryotes. There are protists, there are fungi, there are plants, and then there are animals. Protist is a common term for a collection of eukaryote groups that are not plants, animals, or fungi collectively.